Stupid people are dangerous, not because they lack intelligence, but because they are unaware of the power of their decisions. You see, ignorance is not just about lacking knowledge, it's about failing to recognize the impact your actions have on others and the world around you. Stupidity isn't a reflection of intellect, but a reflection of poor choices, misguided thinking, and an inability to comprehend the weight of consequences. People who operate from a place of ignorance or arrogance endanger not just themselves, but everyone they come into contact with. They make decisions based on emotions without thinking through the ramifications, and that's where the danger lies. When someone is unaware of their influence, they act recklessly. They tear down, manipulate, deceive, and destroy without ever realizing the damage they leave in their wake. But you are not one of them. You must rise above the level of ignorance that so many people are stuck in. You have been endowed with the power of wisdom and discernment, which means your actions should reflect a deeper understanding of the world, the people around you, and your purpose. You are called to be different. When you know better, you do better. And when you do better, you create a better world. It is not enough to have knowledge. You must know how to apply it. You must understand that your decisions ripple through time, affecting not only your life, but the lives of others. You are entrusted with a responsibility, one, that requires you to think critically, act wisely, and lead with a clear vision. Stupid people may not care about the consequences of their actions, but you must care. You must lead with integrity, act with intention, and speak with purpose. Do not waste your time with those who are content to live in the shadows of ignorance. Surround yourself with those who challenge you, those who inspire you, and those who push you to grow. The foolish will always be among us, but it is the wise who will rise above. It is the wise who will build, create, and transform. It is the wise who will change the world. Make sure you are one of them. Stupidity is not merely a lack of intelligence, it is a refusal to understand or consider the consequences of one's actions. It's the inability or unwillingness to connect cause and effect, to recognize that every decision we make has a ripple effect that extends far beyond ourselves. This type of ignorance is dangerous because it blinds people to the impact they have on their environment, their relationships, and even on the future of others. It's not the absence of knowledge that makes someone a threat, but the disregard for the responsibility that comes with it. When someone operates without this awareness, their actions become careless and destructive. They act impulsively, often driven by emotions, personal gain, or pride, without pausing to reflect on the potential harm they may cause. Such behavior doesn't just hinder their own growth, it creates chaos in the lives of those around them. They leave behind a trail of broken relationships, shattered trust, and missed opportunities, all because they failed to understand the weight of their decisions. You see, wisdom begins with humility, the willingness to admit that you don't know everything, and the desire to learn. But stupidity thrives in arrogance, where people refuse to listen, refuse to grow, and refuse to acknowledge their mistakes. This is why stupidity becomes so dangerous. It is blind to correction. A person who cannot recognize the harm they are causing is a person who cannot be held accountable. And when accountability is absent, the cycle of damage continues. True understanding demands that we think beyond ourselves, that we consider not just what we want, but how our actions will affect others. It's a responsibility that cannot be taken lightly. Stupidity, however, dismisses this responsibility, replacing it with a narrow, self-centered perspective. And when people live this way, the consequences are often irreversible, leaving others to pick up the pieces of their carelessness. It is a call to action for all of us to be vigilant, to be intentional, and to seek wisdom above all else. Because when wisdom prevails, it not only protects us, but also shields those around us from the dangers of foolishness. Stupid people harm not just themselves, but everyone around them, often in ways they cannot see or understand. Their actions ripple outward, touching lives and situations far beyond their immediate sphere. They make decisions without thought, and these decisions can create consequences that affect families, communities, and even entire systems. The danger lies in their lack of foresight and their inability to perceive how their behaviors disrupt the lives of others. Imagine someone who refuses to consider the rules of the road while driving. They are not just a danger to themselves, but to every other driver, every pedestrian, and even those in their own vehicle. Their lack of awareness places countless lives at risk. In the same way, those who act recklessly with words, choices, or relationships can cause damage far beyond their understanding. They create conflict, destroy trust, and foster environments of chaos, all while remaining oblivious to the destruction they leave behind. The harm they inflict often stems from their inability to connect their actions with the pain they cause. Whether through gossip, dishonesty, or selfish ambition, their choices create wounds that others must bear. Relationships are broken, opportunities are lost, and peace is disrupted because of their carelessness. They may not even realize the depth of their impact, yet the consequences are undeniable. Worse still, when their actions are left unchecked, their influence spreads. Others may begin to emulate their behavior, thinking it is acceptable. Harmful habits, toxic attitudes, and poor decision-making become normalized, and the cycle of damage continues. The danger of stupidity is that it does not stay contained, it multiplies, affecting those who had no part in the initial act. This is why wisdom and vigilance are so critical. It is not enough to avoid harm yourself. You must also guard against the ripple effects of foolishness in others. Recognize the damage ignorance can do and position yourself as a force for good, a protector of what is right and just. In doing so, you not only shield yourself, but also provide stability and security for those around you. This is the true antidote to the harm caused by stupidity, intentional, thoughtful, and wise action that prioritizes the well-being of others. Ignorance is not defined by a lack of intelligence. It is revealed in the choices a person makes. A highly intelligent individual can still make foolish decisions if they lack the discernment to apply their knowledge wisely. True danger arises not from what people know or don't know, but from their refusal to act with responsibility and thoughtfulness. Poor choices often stem from a place of selfishness, pride, or fear, and these choices, no matter how small they may seem, have far-reaching consequences. Every decision we make is a seed planted in the soil of our lives and the lives of others. Stupidity, when allowed to govern choices, plants seeds of chaos, destruction, and dysfunction. It shows itself in impulsive actions where a person values momentary gratification over lasting impact. They may act without consulting wisdom, without listening to counsel, and without pausing to consider the long-term effects. In doing so, they create outcomes that harm relationships, damage trust, and obstruct progress. This is why poor decision-making is not a trivial matter. It has the power to derail destinies, sabotage opportunities, and create unnecessary struggles. For example, a decision made out of anger words spoken in haste or an action taken in retaliation can shatter years of effort and tear apart relationships in an instant. These choices often cannot be undone, leaving scars that linger long after the moment has passed. What makes ignorance so dangerous is its resistance to correction. Those who make poor choices often justify their actions rather than learning from them. They close their ears to advice, ignore the signs of their mistakes, and repeat the same destructive patterns. This stubbornness turns a single poor decision into a lifestyle of dysfunction, and the longer it goes unchecked, the greater the damage becomes. But it doesn't have to be this way. Every poor choice is an opportunity to learn, to reflect, and to grow. Wisdom is found in the willingness to pause, to seek understanding, and to prioritize what is right over what is easy. It requires humility, the ability to admit when you are wrong, and the courage to make amends. When we take responsibility for our choices, we not only change the trajectory of our own lives, but also create a ripple of positive influence that can counteract the effects of ignorance. Stupidity is not permanent. It is a result of choices, and choices can change. By embracing discernment, seeking wisdom, and committing to growth, we can break free from the cycle of poor decision-making and live lives that build, uplift, and transform. The power of influence, when misused, becomes a source of great danger. Every one of us wields influence over our families, friends, workplaces, and even strangers we encounter. Influence is not something we choose to have. It is inherent in how we live our lives and the decisions we make. The danger of stupidity lies in the fact that it misuses this power, often without realizing the weight of its consequences. When someone acts foolishly, they are not just making decisions for themselves, they are setting an example that others may follow. A single reckless act can inspire similar behaviors in those who witness it, especially in environments where influence is strong: homes, communities, and social circles. Ignorant decisions send a message, whether intentional or not, that irresponsibility is acceptable. Over time, this can create a culture where foolishness is normalized, where people no longer question harmful actions, but instead adopt them as a way of life. For example, consider someone in a position of leadership, whether in a family, a workplace, or a community, who acts selfishly or dishonestly. Their influence spreads like wildfire. Those who look up to them may begin to mimic their behavior, believing it to be the standard. The damage compounds as one person's ignorance sets off a chain reaction of poor choices. The danger is not just in the initial act, but in the way it multiplies, creating ripples that affect countless others. But the misuse of influence doesn't stop there. Foolish decisions often cause pain, frustration, and conflict, which then spread to others like an infection. A thoughtless word or action can create divisions in relationships, mistrust among colleagues, or bitterness in a community. People who act without understanding their influence often leave others to deal with the fallout of their actions. It is not just their lives that are impacted, they disrupt the harmony, productivity, and peace of those around them. The irony is that most people who misuse their influence don't even realize they are doing it. They underestimate the weight of their words, the reach of their actions, and the example they are setting. They believe their decisions are isolated, affecting only themselves, when in reality their choices can shape the attitudes, behaviors, and futures of many. This is why ignorance paired with influence is so dangerous. It creates harm that extends far beyond the person acting foolishly. We must be vigilant about how we use our influence. Every word we speak, every decision we make, and every action we take sends a message to those around us. Influence, when paired with wisdom, has the power to inspire, uplift, and transform. But when paired with stupidity, it becomes a weapon of destruction. This is why it is critical to be intentional about our actions and to recognize that our lives are interconnected. What we do does not stay contained. It flows into the lives of others, for better or worse. We must choose to use our influence wisely, not for personal gain or momentary satisfaction, but to create a legacy of integrity, thoughtfulness, and growth. This is the only way to counteract the damage caused by the misuse of influence. By living with awareness and responsibility, we can ensure that our influence builds rather than destroys, heals rather than wounds, and uplifts rather than tears down. You are called to rise above ignorance and act with wisdom. The world is full of examples of reckless behavior, poor decisions, and thoughtless actions that lead to harm. But you were not created to live like that. You were designed for a higher purpose, one that requires discernment, responsibility, and a commitment to growth. Rising above ignorance means refusing to settle for mediocrity or foolishness, no matter how common or accepted it may seem in society. To rise above ignorance, you must first recognize it. Ignorance often masquerades as pride, arrogance, or stubbornness. It thrives in environments where people refuse to listen, learn, or take responsibility. But wisdom requires humility, the ability to admit when you are wrong, to ask questions, and to seek understanding. It is not enough to have knowledge. You must apply it in ways that build, nurture, and improve the world around you. Rising above ignorance begins with this intentional pursuit of growth. Acting with wisdom means thinking beyond the immediate moment. Foolishness focuses on short-term gratification, but wisdom considers the long-term impact. It asks, how will this choice affect my life? How will it affect others? Does this action align with the principles of integrity, love, and purpose? When you act with wisdom, you become a builder, someone who invests in the future rather than tearing it down with reckless choices. This calling to rise above ignorance is not just about avoiding harm. It is about becoming a source of light and guidance for others. When you act wisely, you set an example. Your decisions show others that there is a better way, a path that leads to peace, growth, and fulfillment. In a world often dominated by noise and confusion, your wisdom can stand out like a beacon, drawing others toward truth and clarity. However, acting with wisdom is not always easy. It requires patience, self-control, and a willingness to do what is right, even when it is difficult. It may mean going against the crowd, choosing a higher standard, and refusing to compromise on your values. But this is what sets you apart. You were not created to conform to the patterns of foolishness in the world. You were created to rise above them and to inspire others to do the same. When you rise above ignorance, you also protect yourself and those around you. You prevent unnecessary pain, avoid costly mistakes, and create an environment where growth and harmony can flourish. You become someone others can trust, someone who brings stability and wisdom to every situation. This is the power of living with intentionality and purpose. It transforms not only your life, but the lives of everyone you touch. Ultimately, your calling is to leave a legacy of wisdom, one that outlasts you and continues to inspire future generations. By choosing to rise above ignorance, you fulfill that purpose. You become a steward of truth, a protector of what is good, and a builder of what is lasting. This is the life you were meant to live, a life that reflects wisdom, purpose, and the highest calling of all, to make the world better through your choices and actions. Foolishness in one area of life can quickly spill into others. A person who mismanages their finances, for example, may not only face personal hardship, but also create stress and instability for their family. Poor decisions at work can lead to lost opportunities, damaged reputations, or even financial ruin for an entire organization. On a larger scale, ignorance in leadership, whether in politics, business, or communities, can lead to widespread suffering, inequality, and unrest. The effects are not isolated, they branch out, touching lives that were never directly involved in the original decision. This is why ignorance is not a private matter. No one lives in isolation. Our lives are interconnected. What you do affects others, whether you realize it or not. Ignorance operates like a stone thrown into a still pond. The initial splash may seem small, but the ripples spread outward endlessly, disrupting the calm. A careless word, a rash decision, or a selfish action can cause divisions in relationships, erode trust, and even create conflict where none existed before. The ripple effects of ignorance are far-reaching and often irreversible. Compounding the danger is the fact that those who act foolishly often remain unaware of the harm they cause. They see only the immediate outcome of their actions, not the long-term impact. This lack of awareness allows the cycle to continue, with one bad decision leading to another, creating layers of damage that others are left to repair. Their ignorance becomes a burden on those around them, forcing others to pick up the pieces, absorb the consequences, and rebuild what has been broken. The effects of ignorance are not just relational or emotional, they are deeply spiritual as well. Foolishness clouds judgment and blinds people to truth, making it harder for them to recognize what is right. It creates a barrier to growth and transformation, trapping people in cycles of failure and dysfunction. Worse, it can lead others astray, causing them to adopt the same harmful patterns. The ripple effects of ignorance are not limited to the present. They can shape the futures of families, communities, and even generations. But the cycle can be broken. The antidote to the ripple effects of ignorance is intentionality, living with awareness, responsibility, and wisdom. When you make thoughtful decisions, you create positive ripples that counteract the damage caused by foolishness. A kind word can restore trust, a wise choice can rebuild what was lost, and a selfless act can inspire others to live with greater integrity. Every decision you make has the power to influence not just your life, but the lives of countless others. You have the ability to choose what kind of legacy you leave behind. Will it be one of harm and destruction, or one of healing and growth? The ripple effects of wisdom are just as powerful as those of ignorance, but they lead to life, not destruction. By committing to live with purpose, thoughtfulness, and love, you can create a legacy that outshines the darkness of foolishness and transforms the world around you. Ignorance, when left unchecked, thrives in environments where accountability is absent. Without accountability, there are no safeguards, no checks and balances to prevent harm from spreading. Accountability is the guardrail that keeps human behavior within the bounds of wisdom, integrity, and responsibility. It is the principle that ensures actions are not only considered, but also weighed against their potential impact on others. Without it, foolishness flourishes unchecked, and the damage it causes escalates exponentially. People who lack accountability often live in a bubble of their own perceptions, blind to the consequences of their actions. They convince themselves that their choices are harmless or justified, ignoring the harm they cause to others. This mindset is especially dangerous because it creates a sense of impunity and environment where people believe they can act recklessly without facing the repercussions. Over time, this lack of accountability erodes trust, undermines relationships, and weakens the very fabric of communities, families, and organizations. Consider the workplace as an example. A team member who consistently shirks responsibilities or makes careless errors without accountability creates dysfunction. Their behavior forces others to compensate for their negligence, leading to frustration, burnout, and resentment. Without accountability, the team's productivity suffers, morale declines, and the organization's goals are jeopardized. One person's lack of responsibility can derail the efforts of many simply because there are no mechanisms in place to address the problem. The absence of accountability is also a breeding ground for complacency. When people are not held accountable, they lose the motivation to grow, improve, or act with excellence. They settle for mediocrity, which not only stunts their own development, but also affects those who depend on them. A parent who refuses to take responsibility for their actions sets an example for their children, teaching them that irresponsibility is acceptable. A leader who avoids accountability creates a culture of dishonesty and shortcuts where people prioritize convenience over integrity. Accountability is not just about holding others responsible, it is also about holding ourselves responsible. True accountability begins within. It requires self-reflection, humility, and a willingness to admit mistakes. It means recognizing that our actions matter, that we are part of something bigger than ourselves, and that our choices